Hello everyone. Welcome to the podcast, where we explore in an entirely new way. Join me as we dive into the fascinating world, where each video brings knowledge and unforgettable experiences. Let's jump into the story now. Marriage often brings with it the tension between personal freedom and commitment. For many, this delicate balance becomes a battleground where desires and expectations clash. Greg Thompson, a devoted husband and the successful CEO of Thompson Financial Services, is on the verge of unveiling a surprise getaway to Italy for his wife, Sarah, hoping to rekindle their romance. However, as he steps into the kitchen to greet her, an undercurrent of emotional distance lingers in the air, suggesting that not all is well in their relationship. The moment feels heavy. Sarah's gaze is elsewhere, reflecting a tumultuous inner struggle. Greg senses that beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, there are unresolved issues brewing, and his intuition is soon validated. What he perceives as a joyous occasion turns into an unexpected confrontation about their marriage, revealing Sarah's long-buried feelings of confinement. As they navigate this emotional terrain, Greg must confront the possibility that the foundation of their life together is crumbling. What began as a romantic getaway morphs into a pivotal turning point, forcing both Greg and Sarah to confront their deepest fears and desires. In this moment of honesty, they embark on a candid dialogue that will ultimately reshape their lives. Sarah's yearning for independence and her desire to explore her individuality clash with Greg's commitment to their marriage. The atmosphere thickens as Sarah proposes a radical solution, a 6-month separation during which they would have no contact. This shocking proposal sends Greg's world spiraling as he grapples with the implications of Sarah exploring relationships with other men. The conversation becomes a litmus test of their love, loyalty, and the vows they once exchanged, setting the stage for an emotional roller coaster that neither of them could have anticipated. As the tension rises, Greg's commitment to their marriage is tested in ways he never imagined, revealing a path of betrayal, self-discovery, and the harsh realities of love that could either bind them closer or tear them apart forever. Greg Thompson stepped into the kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the faint scent of lavender from the candles Sarah lit earlier. It was a familiar setting, one that usually brought him comfort, but today, a thick tension hung in the air, making the space feel claustrophobic. He leaned against the counter, watching his wife as she stood by the sink, lost in thought, her hands absent-mindedly washing the dishes. "Hey, Sarah," he called out, trying to infuse warmth into his voice. "I have a surprise for you." She turned slightly, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment before drifting back to the sudsy water. "Oh? What is it?" Greg's heart raced with excitement as he prepared to reveal the getaway he had meticulously planned to Italy. But he noticed the way her lips barely curled into a smile, how her laughter felt absent, like a fading echo of their happier times. The joy he had anticipated felt muted. "Just something special. I thought we could use a break, you know. A little getaway just for us," he said, attempting to capture the spark of their earlier years. However, instead of the enthusiastic response he expected, Sarah's expression darkened. She sighed heavily, placing the dish down with a clatter. "Greg, can we talk?" His stomach dropped, sensing the seriousness of her tone. "Of course. What's on your mind?" As he watched her gather her thoughts, a knot formed in his chest. Sarah turned to face him, her arms crossed tightly, her vulnerability evident. "I just feel trapped, Greg. I've been feeling this way for a while now." The words hung between them, heavy and charged. Greg felt the ground shift beneath his feet as he struggled to process her confession. "Trapped? In what way?" he asked, his voice steadier than he felt. "In my roles, in our life," she replied, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I love you, but I need to explore who I am outside of being your wife and a mother. I want to find my individuality again." Her admission hit him like a physical blow. Greg's mind raced, memories of their wedding day flashing before him, promises exchanged in front of friends and family. They were supposed to be partners, navigating life together. How had they arrived at this crossroads? If you think the story is good, leave a comment with the number 1, and if not, please subscribe to the channel. If the video is helpful to you, don't forget to hit the like button. Are you saying you want to leave me? He asked, the words feeling foreign on his tongue. Sarah shook her head, a frown deepening on her face. No, not necessarily. But I need space. I think it might be best if we take a break, maybe a 6-month separation. The idea crashed into him like a wave, leaving him breathless. A complete separation? The thought of her dating other men sent a jolt of anxiety through his veins. You mean, no contact? You want to see other people? I need to figure things out for myself, she said softly, her voice trembling. I don't want to feel guilty about wanting to explore my options. Greg felt a mixture of anger and betrayal. How could she even consider this? And what about us? What about our vows? Sarah's face twisted with frustration. I'm not saying I don't love you. I just need time to discover who I am without the expectations of being a wife and a mother hanging over me. As they stood in the kitchen, the conversation took a turn, leading them into uncharted emotional territory. Greg's heart raced with fear, and he felt the distance growing between them. He struggled to find words, to bridge the gap that seemed to widen with each revelation. Their once solid foundation now felt shaky and uncertain, leaving him to grapple with the impending reality of their marriage unraveling. The air grew heavier as Sarah's proposal hung between them, a stark reminder of the chasm opening in their marriage. Greg's mind raced, grappling with the shock of her words. 6 months apart? The very idea felt like a dagger to his heart. I can't believe you would want that, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It's not what I want, Greg. It's what I need, Sarah replied, her eyes pleading for understanding. I need to explore relationships, see who I am without you. Explore relationships? Greg echoed, incredulity rising in his throat. You're talking about dating other men while we're still married. How is that even fair? Sarah's brow furrowed, frustration etched across her face. It's not about fairness. It's about self-discovery. I want to figure out who I am and what I want from life. This marriage has made me lose sight of that. The weight of her confession pressed down on him. Greg felt his chest constricting as waves of betrayal crashed over him. How could she consider this an avenue for growth? And what about our vows? Our commitment? What do those mean to you if you can just walk away for 6 months? I'm not walking away from our marriage, she insisted, her voice rising slightly. I just need to step back and see if I can find my individuality. I need to understand what I want outside of being your wife and a mother. We're not children, Greg. We're adults. We should be able to navigate this maturely. Maturely. The word rang hollow in his ears. Greg felt like he was standing on the edge of a cliff, peering into an abyss. So you think it's okay to see other people? To be intimate with other men? He pressed, his voice strained. Yes. But it doesn't mean I don't love you. I'm not saying I want to replace you. I want to find myself again. Can't you see that? The tension in the room was palpable as silence enveloped them. Greg's heart raced as he tried to fathom the implications of Sarah's words. The thought of her with someone else was unbearable. What if you don't come back? He whispered, the vulnerability of his question cutting through the tension. I will come back, Greg. I just need to know that I can, she replied, her voice softer now, a hint of desperation in her eyes. The conversation shifted to logistics as Sarah began to outline her plans for the separation. She spoke of moving into a new apartment and taking classes to explore her interests. Each detail felt like a fresh wound, cutting deeper into Greg's heart. He listened in disbelief, struggling to process the reality of what was happening. What about the kids? He asked, his voice trembling. What do we tell them? How do we explain this? We'll figure that out together, Sarah said, but her confidence wavered. I don't want to hurt them. But I think it's better to be honest about what we're feeling. They'll understand eventually. Greg's head spun as he processed everything. The image of their family, the laughter, the love, began to shatter before his eyes. A knot of anxiety twisted in his stomach as he considered what this meant for their lives. Would they be able to mend the cracks in their marriage after such a separation? Or was this the beginning of the end? As the evening wore on, Greg found himself questioning the very foundation of their love. The vows they had taken felt like a distant memory, and the path ahead seemed shrouded in uncertainty. Each passing moment deepened his sense of loss, leaving him to grapple with the looming reality of a life without Sarah, his partner, his confidant, his wife. The emotional confrontation reached its peak as Greg could no longer hold back the storm of feelings swirling within him. He faced Sarah, his heart pounding in his chest, a mix of anger and desperation coursing through his veins. "How can you even think about being with someone else?" he demanded, his voice thick with emotion. "You're asking me to accept that you'll be intimate with other men while we're still married." Sarah's expression shifted, her defensiveness rising. "I'm not asking you to accept it. I'm asking you to understand that this is something I need to do for myself. It's not about replacing you. It's about finding who I am outside of this marriage." Greg felt the weight of betrayal settle heavily on his shoulders. "You're just going to throw away everything we've built together," he shouted, frustration spilling over. "Our life, our kids, everything means nothing to you if you can just walk away like this." "It's not that simple, Greg," she shot back, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and pain. "You're making this about you, but it's not. I've lost myself in being your wife and a mother. I want to be whole again." "But you can't just leave me like this," he countered, each word laced with despair. "You're asking me to watch you walk away and possibly fall in love with someone else. What am I supposed to do with that?" The argument escalated, voices rising in a cacophony of hurt and misunderstanding. Greg's mind raced, replaying memories of their life together, dancing in the kitchen, laughter over dinner, quiet moments with their children. All those memories felt tainted now, overshadowed by the reality of Sarah's choices. "Why can't you see that I'm trying to do this in a way that feels right for me?" she pleaded, her voice cracking. "This isn't just about wanting to leave you. It's about needing space to discover who I am without all of this pressure." Greg's anger flared again, and he stepped closer, his voice low and intense. "You're talking about infidelity, Sarah. How can you justify that? How can you call this growth when you're putting our entire family at risk?" As the confrontation continued, Greg felt a wave of despair crash over him. The thought of Sarah's infidelity gnawed at him like a relentless ache, deepening the wound that had already begun to fester. "You think you can just go out and have fun, explore whatever it is you're looking for, and then come back to me when it suits you?" Sarah opened her mouth to respond, but the words caught in her throat. Instead, tears filled her eyes as she shook her head, frustration and sorrow intertwining on her face. "I don't want to hurt you. But I can't keep pretending that everything is fine when it's not. I need this for me, Greg. You need to let me go." His heart shattered at her words, and a wave of anger surged within him. "So this is it? You just walk away, and I'm supposed to be okay with it?" The finality of her decision loomed over them like a dark cloud. Greg's emotions surged as he realized that their marriage stood on the brink of collapse. "What about our vows?" he implored, voice cracking. "What does that mean to you?" Sarah's silence spoke volumes, her eyes reflecting the depth of their shared history and the painful truth of her desires. The realization hit him hard: this wasn't just a temporary separation, it was the beginning of a profound change in their lives. The walls of their relationship, once strong and sturdy, now felt paper-thin, trembling under the weight of their emotional upheaval. In that moment, the intensity of their confrontation reached a breaking point. Sarah turned away, overwhelmed by her emotions, and Greg stood there, heart racing, feeling the air grow cold around him. The couple's argument echoed in the empty kitchen, the sound of their unresolved pain lingering in the air, marking the end of the life they once knew. Following the separation, both Greg and Sarah embarked on their individual journeys of self-exploration, each facing the harsh realities of their choices. Greg threw himself into his work, using it as a refuge from the emotional turmoil that had become his life. The office, once a backdrop for his successes, now served as a distraction from the pain of losing Sarah. He redecorated their home, attempting to breathe new life into spaces that felt suffocatingly empty without her presence. But as the days turned into weeks, the reality of Sarah's absence settled heavily in his chest. Greg found himself grappling with feelings of loneliness and longing. Even amidst the busy hum of the office, he couldn't escape the haunting memories of their life together, the laughter shared over dinner, the quiet moments spent watching their children grow. The vibrant colors of their past now felt washed out and faded, leaving behind a lingering sense of loss. Meanwhile, Sarah moved into her new apartment, the fresh start she had longed for filled with a mix of excitement and trepidation. She began attending classes to explore her interests, trying to reconnect with her identity outside the confines of marriage. Each new experience brought with it a sense of freedom, yet she struggled with the emotional weight of the separation from her family. Attempts to connect with their children were met with resistance. They missed their father and the life they had known, leaving Sarah feeling increasingly isolated. Late-night conversations with friends provided a temporary escape from her reality, but deep down, she wrestled with guilt and uncertainty. The images of her children's faces, filled with confusion and sadness, haunted her during moments of quiet. She often found herself questioning her decisions, wondering if she had made a mistake. Was this newfound freedom worth the pain it had inflicted on her family? As the separation wore on, both Greg and Sarah began to change. Greg embraced a new sense of independence, spending more time with colleagues and trying to reclaim parts of his life that had been overshadowed by the demands of marriage and fatherhood. He filled his evenings with late work hours and social gatherings, where laughter echoed around him, but inside, he felt an emptiness that no amount of distraction could fill. Sarah, on the other hand, felt the weight of her choices closing in on her. The thrill of self-discovery was often overshadowed by the reality of her family's fragmentation. She attended classes that inspired her creatively, yet the joy she sought often slipped through her fingers, replaced by a longing for the closeness she once shared with Greg and the children. Despite the physical distance between them, emotional connections still lingered in the shadows of their minds. They each found themselves caught in a cycle of reflection, contemplating the life they had built and the paths they were now traversing. As the 6-month mark approached, tension simmered beneath the surface. Greg and Sarah's journeys of self-discovery were laced with the underlying fear of what lay ahead. They would soon face the choices that would determine the course of their future, together or apart. Greg, emboldened by the changes he had made, began to wonder if he could ever return to the old dynamic they once had, while Sarah grappled with the realization that the freedom she sought had come at a steep price. With the separation hanging like a specter over them, both Greg and Sarah stood at a crossroads, each contemplating the irrevocable changes that lay ahead. The journey of self-exploration had begun, but would it lead them back to each other, or further away from the love they once cherished? As the 6-month mark approached, the air between Greg and Sarah crackled with tension. The changes they had undergone during their time apart had shaped them in ways neither had anticipated. Greg had found a new sense of strength and independence, becoming more assertive in both his personal and professional life. He had redecorated their home, transforming it into a space that reflected his tastes and preferences, a sanctuary that felt distinctly his. Yet, despite these changes, he couldn't shake the underlying ache of longing for the life they had shared. On the other hand, Sarah grappled with the consequences of her choices. As the separation drew to a close, she felt an unsettling mix of excitement and dread. She had sought freedom but found herself increasingly isolated, missing the intimacy and connection she once had with Greg and their children. The classes she had taken and the new friends she had made had not filled the void left by her family. Instead, they served as reminders of what she had lost. The day finally came when they were scheduled to meet at the lawyer's office to finalize their divorce. Greg arrived early, his heart pounding with anxiety. As he sat in the waiting room, he couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed since the fateful conversation that had sparked their separation. The thought of officially ending their marriage sent a wave of sadness crashing over him. He had spent the last few months trying to adapt to life without Sarah, yet the reality of this moment felt overwhelming. When Sarah walked into the office, her expression was a mix of determination and vulnerability. The sight of her stirred a whirlpool of emotions within Greg: memories, love, resentment, and regret intertwined in a chaotic dance. They exchanged hesitant greetings before taking their seats across from each other, the atmosphere heavy with unspoken words. As the lawyer reviewed the paperwork, Greg felt compelled to confront Sarah about her infidelity, a dark shadow that loomed over their separation. He took a deep breath, forcing himself to look her in the eye. "I know about the other men," he said, his voice steady despite the storm inside him. "You can't expect me to just walk away without addressing that." Sarah's face paled, and her eyes widened in surprise. "Greg, Don't," he interrupted, his voice firm. "You need to understand how deeply you've hurt me. I thought we were working through this, but you went behind my back." Tears brimmed in Sarah's eyes as she struggled to respond. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I needed to explore and discover myself. I didn't think it would lead to this." "Yet here we are," Greg replied, his heart heavy with the weight of their choices. The emotional fallout between them felt palpable, lingering like a dark cloud that refused to dissipate. As the lawyer continued to speak, the emotional intensity of the moment reached a breaking point. Greg felt a desperate plea for forgiveness escape from his lips, the years of shared love and history flooding back to him. "I just wanted us to be happy, to be whole again. I can't do this anymore." Sarah leaned forward, her voice breaking. "I'm sorry, Greg. I see now how selfish I've been. I want to go back, to fix this, but I don't know if you can ever forgive me." The weight of her words hung in the air as Greg contemplated the emotional scars they had both endured. The journey of separation had shown him a new path, but it was marred by betrayal. He had to make a choice, one that would ultimately define his future. With a heavy heart, Greg stood up, determination coursing through him. "I need to move forward with my life, Sarah. I can't go back to the way things were." The finality of his decision echoed in the room as he walked away, leaving Sarah to confront the consequences of her choices. As he stepped outside, the sunlight felt different, warmer, symbolizing a new beginning. In the aftermath, Greg found solace in new relationships, particularly with Tara and Greta, who provided support as he navigated this uncharted territory of his life. Meanwhile, Sarah faced the harsh reality of her decisions, struggling to cope with the emotional scars that remained. The narrative concluded with reflection, a bittersweet reminder of the growth both characters had experienced and the irrevocable changes in their lives. The complexities of love and betrayal lingered in their hearts, forever altering the paths they would take. In the aftermath of their separation, both Greg and Sarah began to carve out new lives for themselves, forever changed by the experiences they had endured. For Greg, the journey toward healing was gradual but transformative. He found strength in embracing his newfound independence and began to explore aspects of life he had previously set aside. The support from Tara and Greta became invaluable as they offered companionship and understanding. These relationships provided him with the emotional stability he needed while navigating the complexities of single fatherhood and the pain of his broken marriage. As he focused on his career and personal growth, Greg discovered a renewed sense of purpose. He poured his energy into Thompson Financial Services, driving the company to new heights while also fostering a deeper connection with his children. Weekend outings became a priority, allowing him to create lasting memories with them, and in those moments of laughter and joy, he felt a sense of fulfillment that had eluded him for so long. It was during these times that Greg began to understand the importance of resilience, learning that life could still be rich and meaningful even in the face of heartache. Meanwhile, Sarah faced her own set of challenges. The reality of her choices began to sink in as she dealt with the consequences of her actions. The thrill of her newfound freedom quickly faded, replaced by feelings of loneliness and regret. Despite her initial hopes of self-discovery, she found it difficult to forge connections with others that felt genuine. Each day brought a reminder of the love and family she had willingly left behind, and the emptiness that surrounded her grew heavier. Sarah's attempts to reconnect with their children were met with resistance, as they struggled to understand the changes in their lives. The emotional distance that had developed felt insurmountable, and Sarah often found herself questioning her decisions. Could she have done things differently? Would there ever be a way to repair the damage she had inflicted on her family? These questions haunted her as she navigated the complexities of her new reality. As the months passed, Greg and Sarah's paths diverged further, yet the echoes of their past remained present in their minds. Both were learning that the journey of self-discovery often comes with a price, a lesson wrapped in layers of complexity, love, and betrayal. Their lives, once intertwined, now existed in parallel, each shaping their futures in the wake of their choices. In the end, Greg found solace in the belief that he could create a fulfilling life outside of the marriage that had defined so much of his identity. Sarah, on the other hand, grappled with the realization that her quest for independence had come at the cost of her family's unity. The narrative concluded with both characters reflecting on their journeys, highlighting the themes of personal growth, the intricate nature of love, and the profound impact of choices made in the heat of passion and conflict. As they moved forward, it became evident that both Greg and Sarah would carry the scars of their past, but those scars would also serve as reminders of their resilience and the lessons learned along the way. The complexity of their experiences underscored the unpredictable nature of love and the profound transformations that come from navigating the turbulent waters of relationships. With each passing day, they continued to evolve, forever marked by their journey, yet hopeful for the future that lay ahead. If you think the story is good, leave a comment with the number 1, and if not, please subscribe to the channel. If the video is helpful to you, don't forget to hit the like button.